Welcome, sports fans, to the BnK Sportstalk Show. I'm Nick Bodkins.
And I'm Craig Koger. We're going to get started with the Thursday night football game last night. The Colts beat the Titans, get a win back on track. Do you think this win will boost the Colts to make the playoffs?
You know, I don't think they're going to. They did look very good last night. Peyton Manning, no interceptions, played well for the first time in the last few games. But they play Jacksonville next weekend, and there's one thing that Jacksonville does well, and that's run the football. And that eats up a lot of clock. They're going to give it to Maurice Jones-Drew, who is probably one of the elite running backs. Nobody's talking about quietly having an MVP season down there in Jacksonville. Nobody's really talking about that team or them. All right, and I think they're going to be able to beat the Colts next week. I think he runs the ball well because the Colts still can't stop the running game. We saw that last night with Chris Johnson. They're going to get the ball to him, and I think they can beat the Colts again, and even though this game's in Indy coming up next week.
I think this is a big win for the Colts, and I think the next week the Colts, they're coming off a long week. That's going to be good for them. That's going to be good for a lot of their guys that are banged up, and I think the Colts do beat the Jaguars whenever they play next week. And I think the Colts, they have an opportunity to run the table out. If they beat Jacksonville, they've got Oakland and then Tennessee again. Peyton Manning is normally lights out against Tennessee. And I think this win was huge for the Colts. It gives them that confidence. It gives them a little bit of that swagger back. And I think the Colts do make the playoffs. I don't see Peyton Manning sitting at home when the playoffs start.
Yeah, it doesn't happen too often, but I think it's going to happen this year. They're going to have to, just too many injuries on that team. And like I said, they don't stop to run the ball well. So I like to see them beat Jacksonville to beat them next week.
Moving on to baseball, Cliff Lee still on the market. The Yankees offering him big-time money. Say they offer him 5, 6, and 7 years. The Rangers are trying to compete with that. Carl Crawford just signs a huge deal with the Red Sox that already signed Adrian Gonzalez. Do you think baseball needs a salary cap?
You know what? I do believe this. I believe this. I've thought this for a long time that baseball needs to do something. You have teams that are never going to win in baseball. The Pirates, the Orioles, these teams, the Royals, teams in small markets that just seem they're not going to be able to compete. You know what makes football so good is on a day-to-day basis, somebody can beat somebody because you can go out and get that guy. And, it's not a bidding war for somebody each year. The Yankees and the Red Sox, maybe the Phillies, they're always able to get the best players, and you're able to buy those guys because you have the most money. If you have the most money, you're going to be able to throw the most money down. If Cliff Lee is going to turn down, we all know Cliff Lee, if he goes to the Rangers, he's going to turn down less money to stay there because the Yankees are offering this, they're giving this guy the bank. And I definitely always agree. I always thought that baseball needs revenue sharing or some type of salary cap. So we're not seeing these outrageous contracts, 7 years, $146 million, or like Jason Worth, where we're going to see a guy at 40 still making $130 million. I always thought that baseball needs a salary cap. That way we're not still having these, bottom feeders. You might as well just kick the rest of these teams to the curb. There's only 1 or 2, small market teams that do well last year. We've seen the Rays do well the last few years, but it looks like they're going to be on the downside, losing Carlos Pena, Carl Crawford, and maybe Matt Garza is in the trade talks as well. So I've always thought that they need a salary cap in baseball there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think baseball does need a salary cap. Like you said, these same teams, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Phillies, even the Cubs are a big market team. These teams spend a lot of money. They pay a lot of money for good players. And when free agents hit the market, it usually comes down to a couple of teams on who's going to get them. It's pretty much who has the most money. And like you said, if Cliff Lee, if he stays in Texas, then it's not about the money because the Yankees are going to put the biggest offer on the table. If the Yankees don't do it, maybe the Red Sox will match it. But between those two teams, they're always throwing out the big contracts to the big name players, getting the big name guys in. Small market teams are always bringing up the prospects, always trading away the guys that are making a name for themselves and the guys that deserve more money. And in baseball, the Yankees and Red Sox, they've only won the World Series 3 times in the past 8 or 10 years, but they're there every year. They're always good. I think baseball needs to do something. Like you said, football, one of the best things about football is it's just competitive week in and week out. And in baseball, it's not really the same thing all the time.
Yeah, even though we saw it last year, we saw not really 2 small market teams, but teams with not a lot of big money payrolls in the Giants and the Rangers. But you look at both those teams; they both picked up guys. They didn't really have a big key star. The Rangers did in Cliff Lee and Josh Hamilton, but they didn't go out and buy these guys with the bank. They made some trades for them. and they were able to get these guys. The Giants, a lot of their best players were some homegrown or guys that other teams didn't want. They were able to pick off the waivers in small trades. They didn't go out and buy the best players, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I definitely need the salary cap needs to happen in baseball.
Moving on to the NBA, the Mavericks have won their 11th straight. How good are the Mavericks?
You know what? They're pretty good. They went from the fifth seed to the third seed. Rick Carlisle's put a nice team together. You look at this roster and you say, you know what? How come they've never won anything? Jason Kidd, Dirk Nowitzki, Sean Marion, Jason Terry, J.J. Barrera's pretty nice, the point guard coming off the bench. They got some nice pieces there in Dallas. Mark Cuban's always willing to make a move and make this team better, but I don't think they're still at the top 3 or 4 team in the NBA. I think they're probably in that second. The Lakers, Spurs, Celtics, they're right there, and then you have maybe the Mavericks one notch below them. I don't think they're going to win the finals this year. This is a nice run. They always make a nice run in almost every season as we see them, and they're making it right now. But it's a good start for the Mavericks, even though I don't think they're going to carry this on to the playoffs and do anything there and win, as far as winning a championship.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The Mavericks are a good team. They got a lot of good players, but everybody's talking about the Mavericks. They're still number 2 in their division behind the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs look like a better basketball team than the Dallas Mavericks, and year in and year out, the Dallas Mavericks always look good in the regular season. They always have their hot streaks. Talk to me about the Dallas Mavericks when playoff time comes around, and see what they do. As history goes, the Dallas Mavericks, this is no surprise, but I don't think they're going to be the Western Conference champs.
Yeah, they're always, I like to call them their choke artists. I mean, Dirk, they choked in the finals. They choked the year later when they lost the Warriors. That's just the past history. Last year they made it past the second round, didn't make it into the conference championship or anything like that. This team's, they always got nice pieces and nice talent, but they haven't been able to do much with it.
All right, moving on to college basketball. Kyrie Irving of Duke, their point guard, is hurt. And Jared Sullinger of Ohio State put 40 points up on a comeback win against IUPI. Can Ohio State maybe overtake Duke in the standings now with these injuries?
I don't think so, because Duke really, if Kyrie Irving, we don't know how long he's going to be out for. He could be possibly out for their season. The next time we may see him might be in the NBA if he does not decide to come back. There for a while, he was looking like the best player in college basketball. Duke, though, I think they're just too good even without him. They still have Nolan, they still have the Curry kid, they still have Kyler Singler, who's really nobody's talking about this year, who was the stud of that team last year. Sullinger had a nice game last year, the most points ever by Ohio State player in the history of Ohio State, and they've had some good ones go through there. Greg Oden, Mike Conley, Sullinger looking like a guy that All-American maybe, or at least an All-Big Ten, All-Freshman guy that we thought he was going to be. They struggled against IUPUI. That's really not much of a big school. And we've seen Duke be able to thrash a couple of smaller schools. Ohio State, I think they could maybe win the Big Ten. It'll be tough. I think Michigan State, Illinois are pretty tough teams, and it'll be even tougher for Ohio State. They maybe even win the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Ohio State will eventually win the Big Ten. Ohio State looks like a very good basketball team, but right now there's everybody else in the country, and then there's Duke. Even with Kyrie Irving hurt, the Duke Blue Devils, they didn't have him their last game, and they looked like they weren't even missing a beat. The Duke Blue Devils are the best team in college basketball, and everybody will be saying that until somebody beats them.
Yeah, there was some talk though, Craig, that maybe Duke would go undefeated throughout the season if they had Kyrie Irving. I don't think that would be possible. It's tough to go undefeated in college basketball. Men are women. That's what's so great about the UConn women. Do you think if they would have had Kyrie Irving, that Duke would have been able to finish the season undefeated?
I don't think so. I think maybe they could have finished the season with 2 or 3 losses, but in the ACC, when you got those games against Maryland and North Carolina, those games that teams, even teams that are playing mediocre basketball, they get pumped for those games. Those are rivalry games, and I don't think it's very hard for a team to go undefeated, like you said. I don't think they would have been able to do it.
All right, switching gears, we got our mail-in question. Kenny Miller from Maryland wants to know if Jason Garrett should become the Cowboys head coach, and did he tank the first half of the season to be able to become the head coach there at Dallas? What's your thoughts?
This is an interesting question. First of all, will Jason Garrett be the coach of the Dallas Cowboys next season? I think so. He's done an outstanding job since he took over the job. Did he tank in the first part of the season? Maybe a little bit. The offense didn't look that bad when Tony Romo was out there. Early on in the season, the biggest thing that I noticed about the Dallas Cowboys was their defense looked horrible. And when Tony Romo got hurt and John Kitna came in, those first couple games, the offense looked horrible as well. Could have been a little bit of Jason Garrett. Could have been a little bit of John Kitna not playing for a year and a half. Now that he's kind of in rhythm with some of these starters, the offense is looking better. But more than anything, I think this defense has kind of turned around since he took over the job. I think he's still there next year.
I agree. I think he's still there next year. Just to the fact that they put a nice team. They look like the team a little bit like what we thought they were going to be able to be at the beginning of this season. John Kitna's played well. They're putting up a lot of points. Jason Garrett, he was the original guy that they kind of wanted. He was supposed to be the guy. And, for some reason that he struggles being an offensive coordinator. And some guys, I always say, some guys are meant to be coordinators and some guys are meant to be head coaches. Maybe he was meant to be a head coach and not a coordinator. He didn't do very well there with the offense. As far as tanking, you don't really think he would do that due to the fact because your job's on the line as well. I think, you talked about the defense. I think the disciplinary was there, wasn't there with Wade Phillips. And maybe Jason Garrett has got that team a little bit more disciplined. Unlike when Wade Phillips was there, we've seen a lot of excessive, celebration penalties that cost his team. It cost them a game earlier in the season, and we see them the very next week. They do it again. There was problems there. I think outside of just the offense, the defense, the excessive, the no discipline with the excessive celebration, the dumb penalties. They've kind of cut back on all that since Jason Garrett was there. They look a much more improved team. But as far as him trying to tank the season, I don't know why you would do that because your butt's on the line just as much as Wade Phillips is. So I don't really think he would tank the season.
All right, sticking in the NFL, before we go, we're going to do a couple pick-ems. First big game, Patriots at the Bears this week. How do you see this one going?
I like the Patriots. Tom Brady's just putting on a clinic against folks. It doesn't matter who you are, whether it's the Jets, the Patriots. Those are the Jets and the Steelers. Those are two of the best defenses in the league, and the Bears, who have a very good defense as well. But for some reason, Tom Brady's he's in the zone right now, and you're not going to be able to knock him out of it. The zone could carry him all the way to the Super Bowl. He's lights out. I'm not picking against Tom Brady for a while here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I see the Patriots winning this one. Week after week, we look at the Bears and we look at their record and we wonder if they're as good as they are. They played the Eagles. Everybody kind of thought the Eagles were going to beat the Bears, and the Bears held their ground. They won. They're looking better and better each week, but I don't think they're a good enough team to hold off Tom Brady and the Patriots. Their defense is good. They might be able to slow them down a little bit, but when it comes down to it, you look at quarterbacks. You got Jay Cutler on one side, Tom Brady on the other side. I'm going with Tom Brady.
All right, the other big game of the week, no Matt Castle maybe for the Chiefs versus the Chargers. Who you got in this one?
This game right here is a absolutely must-win for San Diego to keep any kind of playoff hopes alive. It's at home, and if Matt Castle doesn't play, that's a big loss for the Chiefs. Last week, Chiefs offense wasn't looking that good anyway. Dwayne Bowe had no catches. That's a guy that Kansas City's got to get going in their offense if they want to succeed. And Phillip Rivers taking the snaps. I think even though he's on a team that's struggling, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I think the Chargers win this game.
Even though they don't have Matt Castle, the one thing that the Chiefs do well is run the football well. We've seen the Raiders run all over that San Diego defense last week. But no Matt Castle. He's quietly putting a Pro Bowl season together there in Kansas City. Him, Dwayne Bowe did have something going on. Champ Bailey, though, had shut down Dwayne Bowe. But they were still able to win that game last week. This is an injury that might doom Matt Castle and the Chiefs. There's talks that you're supposed to wait maybe a week, if at the another 2 weeks. We've seen with this appendectomy with Ben Roethlisberger, it cost him a week or two a few years ago. This could cost the Chiefs, and maybe even cost them the playoff spot. Because I'm not putting my pick in the hands of Brody Cordell, the Chiefs' backup quarterback. So I'm going to go with San Diego to win this game. But watch the Chiefs; they're going to have to be able to run the ball well and keep Phillip Rivers and that offense off the field. So I do expect big games from Thomas Jones and Jamal Charles. But in the end, I do expect the Chargers to win this game.
All right, that does it for today. Thanks for tuning in, sports fans. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, BnK Sports Talk, or email any comments and questions at bnksportstalk@hotmail.com. I'm Craig Koger.
And I'm Nick Bodkins. Thanks for tuning in.